In this whole unit about the nervous system and cognition, what I'm doing is kind of taking you on a familiar territory and turning around and looking at the path just from a different direction. We haven't gone anywhere else, but we understand it differently as we view it differently. It has implications. But let's, just in this short presentation, look at some of the images that are hard to talk about otherwise. The nerve cells of a 4-day-old zebrafish, you see how well articulated they are, how many branchings there are, how fine a network it is. And this is very, very simple because we couldn't have drawn it if it were, or it couldn't have been photographed if it were any more advanced or complex. And somebody did an interesting study. This is a diagram of what they saw as potential pathways, the different nerves that trigger a muscle, a particular muscle that moves a mouse's ear. There are many, many, many different pathways for getting that twitch to happen, many different combinations of impulses. So one of the ways of putting this is, it's like having the same two teams play more than one football match. They follow the same rules, but no two games are alike. In other words, there's very many different ways that whatever we do as an action can be achieved. And so we end up with the illusion that if we found one of them, that's what causes it. There are multiple triggers possible. There's a reference that I've got on the webpage itself too, and I'll just go through a few little bits of it. It was an account put together by a science writer who's a surgeon. He writes for the New Yorker. And one of the points he says that the counter-perception, the story that we tell about perception that's starting to emerge is what we might call the brain's best guess theory of perception. The perception is the brain's best guess about what is happening in the outside world. Well, that's the way they would put it, but Maturana will put it a little bit more precisely. But what the story does well is it talks about it in a nice way. The mind integrates scattered, weak, rudimentary signals from a variety of sensory channels, information from past experience, and hardwired processes, and produces a sensory experience full of brain-provided color, sound, texture, and meaning. Now, there's a few culturally accepted bits in there that I'm ignoring at the moment. We don't really know what information is from past experiences. Memory, when we get to talking about it, is really a reenactment in the brain. And hardwired, where we're looking at technological correspondence, a metaphor, and we think that our mind works the same way, our biology works, and that's often a mistake, but it sometimes helps us have a metaphor. And then he goes on to say, we see a friendly yellow Labrador bounding behind a picket fence, not because that is the transmission received, but because this is the perception our weaver brain assembles as its best hypothesis of what is out there from the slivers of information we get. I like that weaver brain assembly bit here, and essentially whatever works for our connection with the world works. So it doesn't even have to be a best guess, it just has to be adequate. Perception is inference. So, as Maturana says, and that even though this sounds simple, I found it much more precise. The nervous system is a detector of configurations within itself. It does not detect the outside world. It is triggered into certain activities that we sense internally. We sense ourselves when we sense the world. Thus, the nervous system, you could say, composes what we distinguish as experience.